Hello, everyone, and welcome to our Women in Sectional Title webinar. Today, we're veering slightly off the topic of sectional title schemes and focusing on the evolution of homeowners associations. I'm really interested in this topic because it's grabbed the attention worldwide of not only local municipalities, but also of national government. I think that the wholesale privatization of these large estates is incredibly interesting, and we have a guest who's really equipped to talk to us about it. But before we dive in, I'd just like to say two things. Firstly, to our sponsors, Sectional Title Solutions and We Connect You, a huge thank you. Without you, this platform really wouldn't be operational, and we're very thankful and grateful for your loyal support. We're looking forward to our August webinar with We Connect You, talking about AI in the sectional title workspace. So I've got some exciting news to share with all of you. We are today launching the Women in Sectional Title shop. So to sustain our future growth, we've decided that we need to take the next step, and that would be to build a self-reliant and community-driven platform through our commercial offerings. So in your inbox this morning, you would have received our newsletter with a link to the Women in Sectional Title shop. And that shop you can buy things like customizable and comprehensive conduct rules. You can purchase our book, Demystifying Sectional Title, and you can look at a digital imprint on your own website for an annual fee. Or even as a service provider, you can come onto our marketplace and get some valuable likes and hope purchases of your service providing. So please do contact us if you're interested, and let us know your ideas for our Women in Sectional Title shop. Right, so today I'm very excited to introduce you to Louise Martín, the founder and CEO of Estate Living. Welcome, Louise.
Hi there. Thank you so much for having me. It's really wonderful to be here, and I can see a few of my fellow women in HOA space sending me messages. So thanks, ladies, for supporting me this morning and for bringing me on board.
That's great, Louise. No, we've worked a lot in the past together, and I've always been excited about the work you've done. So Estate Living is a media outlet, and I mean, it started off producing real estate magazines for the industry, but now I see that it's become a national voice for the residential community scheme industry. Louise, just tell us more. Tell us about it.
A bit of the backstory. So Estate Living is now 15 years old. So we actually started as, 15 years ago, we didn't have website platforms like we do today. In fact, I think we didn't even really have websites like we do today. And so we started in a print environment, and we were doing internal publications. So Val de Vie was coming out of the ground, and there were several other estates coming out the ground, and we were doing internal communication, building homeowner sentiment, sharing information about community rules, and really helping potential investors and current investors to kind of understand the environment that they were buying into. And Val de Vie, for example, which was one of our clients, I mean, there was like pretty much nothing there, so it was really early days. But we very quickly noticed that there was a need for information. And it was quite a personal story. I had a friend of mine at my daughter's school, and she was coming out from overseas, and she had been suggested a community by a real estate agent or a property practitioner, and that they bought in this community, which is a beautiful community, but was not suitable for her family setup. She had kids and animals, and this was really a community which was positioned for a much older audience, weren't many facilities for children. So we realized at that point that it really wasn't, if you don't know anything about body corporates or sectional title or HOAs or even estates, wherever you're coming from, there wasn't much information. And that's really where Estate Living came from. It was the desire, and it's still my desire, to assist people to find out everything they need to know about community living or within one space. We don't just look at, and over the years, obviously our product has developed, we don't just look at the body corporate or the HO, we actually look at the entire property value chain. We think there's value for all members of the value chain. And we start that property value chain at when a developer selects a piece of ground and they build the infrastructure, the actual development. So we work with property developers and we assist them with both providing them with information around innovation within the sector, and then also assisting them with helping them find investors that are suitable for those projects. And then once that project has come to its sort of development lifespan, we then move across to where your audience this morning sits in, which is in that HOA body corporate space. So we understand the transition between developer and community. We understand the value of the contracts and the agreements and the laws and legislation around it. So there we work a lot with Homeowners Association and body corporates, from big sort of managing agents like Trafalgar, down to individual estates. And so within that space, we offer best practice policy procedure documents. We also do marketing. We assist with promoting the brand capital, which I think is something that's become more and more, people became more and more aware of the importance of having a brand and promoting that brand as an estate. Whereas in before, it's like, I'm a hidden gem. No one wants to be a hidden gem today. If you're a hidden gem, you have a problem. So, so that kind of idea of just bringing the value that each community offers to the forefront and introducing that to investors. So a last big part of our audience is the residents and homeowners living in estates. And then, of course, those individuals looking to invest into a community. And then we have a footprint in Mauritius as well, where we offer similar services. We've worked in the UAE, UK, US, wherever we find that there is a need for a community environment. So driven by security, lifestyle, sport, leisure, whatever it might be. So it sounds a lot, but we touch on everything. So it's 26 subjects that I could talk to. I could talk about until your audience pass out from exhaustion. But so we cover a wide range and we offer lots of different services. Sure.
Excellent. Thank you for that. And certainly, if you'd like to go on to would you like to just give the website?
Sure. So our website is estate-living.co.za. So you can go along there. And then obviously to the owners, the people living in estates, they receive our publication. We distribute to 232 communities, which is quite funny. We started with about 5 in the Western Cape, and we did that delivery ourselves, me and my daughter in our car, and we've grown it to 232. So that's wonderful, and we appreciate the support. But of course, our distribution through our digital platforms is obviously much wider. And we have about, I think at the end of last year, we reached about 12.4 million individuals that were coming to our site, looking at our content and assisting them to make good decisions for their family.
Right. So now I would like to ask you a couple of questions just about, and your experience is invaluable in this regard. From your vantage point, Louise, how have you viewed the evolution of homeowners associations in South Africa? How have they changed since those years ago?
So I think the driver has always been, and there's definitely been an evolution, and we have witnessed the evolution. I think we've spoken about the evolution, and it's not always gone down so well. I think I've been called out a few times, but initially the primary driver, as we all know, was security. And security is still the fundamental cornerstone of most developments. And I think as long as you look at South Africa and there is crime, security will continue to be that cornerstone. But to get that added value that the property developers are looking for and homeowners are looking for, we found that concept of just offering security sort of started to move away from security only being the offering to starting to bring in lifestyle solutions. And I think the easy ones were things like walking paths, tennis courts, maybe a clubhouse on a golf course. And I think that was the second shift. Initially, we had a few estates that are like Selborne, the earliest developments in the country, which were primarily around golf. But we saw a shift away from that. So now it was, you had your golf estate and you also had a lifestyle estate, which offered lifestyle solutions. And this is also where we started to see the introduction of the way in which communities are managed. Having a concierge service, having a service-based environment it's not now just about making sure that the security is working and the fence is working, but it's also about how you engage with your homeowner and the relationship between the management team and the residents, and then of course the board and the management team. And we definitely at this point started to see a shift, an increase in the number of women that were coming into HOAs and sectional title in management positions, which we had not seen because there were very few. I think that might be the single blonde representation at a few of those early ones, but and I've got Sue on the line here, and they would confess, there was that shift where women were now starting to get into a more senior role because of their EQ, their ability to communicate effectively and to manage the estate without this kind of regimental command center, this kind of attitude was not really going down very well with the new demographic of buyers. We noticed at a similar time, lining up with what was happening in our environment, as our environments, the municipal functions started to deteriorate, ESCOM, load shedding, water restrictions, and things like that, estates were having to start to privatize a lot of their municipal services. And, in the West, and it was driven by the need based on the province. So in the Western Cape, it's a very obvious, we had the bucket, wash your shower with a bucket, the glory days. And so water became a primary, source of like municipal service. And there are a lot of estates that then took on the role of ensuring that their homeowners and residents had solutions around water. Up in Joburg, you saw more around electricity. KZN has been in a green drought, although I'm not sure they will admit it, but they've been in a green drought. They also have infrastructure issues. And so we started to see this kind of mini municipality concept forming. But it was very much in its early days. And there are some members of the HOA that have been calling, this has been their song cry for many, many, many years. And not much movement has happened, but whereas we are today, you almost have to be off the grid to be investor proof, if you can say that. Whereas in those days, it really was just around your province and the needs of your province. Then we had COVID. Mm-hmm. And COVID, just before COVID happened, and one has to watch what property developers are selling to understand the knock-on effect for you as a management team. If a property developer is selling a resort-styled living to its homeowners, buy here and live in a resort, concierge services, high-end security, the same cliche, those words that they use often in material. Have you ever been to a resort? You come to a resort and you stay there for 4 or 5 days and you have a wonderful time. But if you overstay your welcome in a resort, you start to notice the issues. So you had this resort-styled living promise where people bought in, and then almost directly thereafter, you had COVID. And COVID brought two things around. It firstly questioned this resort-styled living because it's impossible on the levy structures that they have, the board of directors, and the type of infrastructure to offer a resort-styled living to every single homeowner every single day that they're living on that property. It's just it's an unfair expectation from a management perspective. But you also had people starting to spend time at home. So where before they were very happy to leave and go off to work, now they were in their homes and on their properties all the time. And governance and good governance really started to rear its head. And we saw a lot of movement from a management perspective within that period as boards of directors were changing. But CSOS was throwing new rules out every day. We had our, Sunday night meetings with the president. And there was a scramble. There was an absolute scramble. And that brought about what I think is kind of where we are sitting at the moment. Investors looking at developments are looking for key things: self-reliance. And what does that mean? Infrastructure like fiber, water, power. They're looking for good governance, and good governance can be brought around with tech solutions. So transparency within reason, which is difficult. The within reason part is probably what a lot of the lawyers in the room would nod to. So, and personally, what I am seeing is nowadays, if you follow the money, a lot of investment is now going into a single owner occupied rental development. So more and more of these single owner occupied rental developments. So an investment company invests in a block of flats. They build a block of flats, they rent it out to students or to whoever it might be. It's owned and run by a single owner occupied. And it's not necessarily creating value for homeowners and residents, it's creating value for funds and investment funds. So, and that is a big shift because suddenly your homeowner is not your owner. So technology plays a role. I think this is where managing agents are seeing an advantage in the market because they need a managing agent to manage both the financial aspects, but also the day-to-day. So the Homeowners Association, as we know it traditionally, it is shifting insofar as there's a rise of these rental units. And if you speak to a investor, a big, large investment fund investor, they'll say, well, in every single European country, no one ever owns their property. But I think in South Africa, something to identify is that we have going back to 1994, owning property is part of is a part of a certain demographic's absolute desire. It is an important part of their ownership journey. So it will be interesting, we look to the future, it'll be interesting where we're going to go with this, because money is being spent in these single owner occupied environments. It's difficult to call them lifestyle estates because the individuals living in those estates aren't necessarily growing capital, getting a capital return from that investment. They're simply renting. And of course, the funds are getting the returns. So, a lot of that's sort of coming up at the moment. There's lots of opportunity in that space, I think, for managing agents. And I think that space is also causing large mixed-use developments where you have an HOA and a body corporate under a master HOA beginning to look at managing agents taking over all of the functions of both the HOA and the body corporate. So no longer just offering financial solutions, but also offering
the full package. Can I just ask you something, Louise? So what do you think?
That was very long. Do you mind if I have a sip of my coffee? Sorry.
Have your coffee, whatever you like. So the thing is that estate managers and managing agents, do the two go together? In my experience, I'm starting to see a little bit of tension or friction between an estate manager who's managing an estate and then the managing agency who's supposedly managing, all the background work.
So I think traditionally managing agents have come in from the point of the financial side. So they've managed the finances, the levy collection, etc. The challenge there is where you're starting to find HOAs that own their own utilities and have contracts with utility management companies who then have to invoice for those utilities. So now already we have we no longer just have a simple relationship between a managing agent and a homeowners association who are just doing a levy collection. We have other players in the mix. We have the guys managing the solar, the water, the fiber, and whatever else has been added to that package deal.
Mm.
I think that they have been two supportive structures because they do two different jobs. In the past, the managing agent manages the finances, I think, and reports back that levy collection and the levy management. The estate manager manages the day-to-day operational side of a residential community. They are the asset managers. They make sure that their maintenance teams and all of the different teams are operating.
Mm.
The question comes is that the managing agents are beginning to offer those operating skills as well. So if you look at Helderfontein, which is a mixed-use development with a sectional title aspect, Trafalgar has taken over that entire development, and the HOA team that was in place have all been retrenched and have now moved on to other positions. So there you see an entire HOA management team being removed from a development. And I don't want to cause like a panic here, but it is possible when you start to look at the structure of that development. You know, what percentage is it of homeowners association? You know, who are they outsourcing their services? What is the offering of that development? Is it a rental-based development with a lot of rental units where it makes sense to have a managing agent present? Or is it a golfing estate where it's freehold property and you've got a golf course and a golf club and you need resort golfing, sort of golfing skills, your what's the there's various degrees and qualifications that you need. So I don't think there's a clash of the titans yet. But I do see enormous amount of movement in the industry. So estate managers are moving around, they're not just moved because of semigration, but rather because they are being challenged. Maybe they have an uncomfortable board, or maybe they're moving, or whatever it is, but we are seeing a lot of movement. And then, of course, we are seeing a lot of movement within the managing agent side of actually taking over a development and offering a set of skills. Whether that's going to work or not is going to be an interesting thing, because I don't know if managing agents 100% understand what goes into managing the day-to-day operations of a community, because the day-to-day operations of community is really managing assets and humans and pets and parking and angry WhatsApp group people and like a whole lot of sort of challenging situations that can, a lot of, risk management, insurance. There's a whole number of aspects that goes into managing a large community. And I think for a managing agent, I'm not sure whether the juice is worth the squeeze, if you think about it, if it depends
I think,
after.
Yeah, I think from my perspective in dealing with homeowners associations, it's almost as though the homeowners associations don't really believe they are a community scheme. It's like, they're almost, it's strange to say, but they look down a little bit on sectional title schemes. They'll tell you 100 times they're not actually a sectional title scheme, and they don't even think that they're a sort of cluster development. The expectation levels are higher. I think that they're higher, they're more demanding. I think there needs to be more on the ground work done in these homeowners associations. And let's face it, these large estates, I mean, there's money there. Yeah. There's a lot of money and moneyed people, and generally, could be quite difficult people who have again, high expectations. But I just want to take the conversation back to this move from possible urban governance to private governance. And we know that municipalities around the world are in decline, Louise. I mean, I took some statistics from the UK even. There was a threat of widespread collapse of local government in 2024 with a £4.3 billion hole in the finances. And councils were teetering on the brink of financial disaster to a large extent, like your Birmingham council went bankrupt. So it's not just a South African thing that we're not getting service delivery and all of that. In China, for example, they've got surveillance on homeowners associations from national government level, because I think they're nervous about the fact that everybody's just taking over. What do you think about that? Do you see that as a problem in the estates that you've dealt with in terms of any clashes between local government and estates?
I think the high-end residential communities where there is a they're well positioned, they've got they've got a high levy, they've got savings, they've got money to be able to bring in private organizations. That's one type of community. And then there's another community on the other side of the spectrum that might not kind of have that kind of reserves that the more wealthier estates might have. I do not think that it's an option. I think that it is a must-have. I think that if you are I think you need to, as estate management, they often work very closely with the Ratepayers Association and with their municipalities. I don't think an estate manager would be wise to try and, they fight their municipalities, absolutely, but I don't think that they would be wise to completely remove the municipality from the equation, because your estate, the properties next to your estate will suffer, and in turn your estate will suffer. We're not islands, we are interconnected communities. We happen to have a fence around us, but we are still affected by what happens to our entire municipality. I think the idea is more around knowledge sharing. The estates have the ability to make savings for a municipality, such as load shedding. They can assist with the power, and as technology improves, things like wheeling and sharing of power become more acceptable. I think the privatization of certain things is, we're ready to go on that side, and municipalities are just a little bit slower to catch up. That doesn't mean that government isn't for these things. I mean, I think there is government support for for people to install solar panels and to have water solutions and all of these kind of solutions in place. The question really
sorry, if I can just interject there, Louise, the one area that possibly is causing consternation about local municipalities is where these private estates may actually join together in some sort of initiative to channel a portion of rates and taxes and things through rather private estates rather than, the coffers of the municipality, which we worry about.
Yeah. So I think if you look at the Western Cape, for example, in the area that I live in a suburb. Yes, there are funds. If you contribute, if you as a community take care of your community, you can get a rebate from your rates and taxes bill for looking after some of the work that the municipality would have done. I would love to see estates come together as precincts and work collectively like they've done in Joburg. I think the Dainfern area is a good example, and there's a lot of NGOs that work, the Go Greener Joburg, you probably know their names better. And I would love to see more of these NGOs and precinct type styled developments happening where people are sharing resources and sharing. But one can't ignore the fact that we have to keep our neighbors involved. So I don't think that at this point, residential communities are looking to kind of club together and ignore the rest of the country. I think the mentality has changed, because remember, where they started was security focused only. Where we're sitting now is good governance, reliable, resident, well-run communities. And well-run communities include a social awareness, an ESG aspect. What are they doing for their neighboring? And they are championing solutions around that. So if a whole bunch of estates clubbed together and shared their power, they could power up their neighboring communities. So
very much so.
Yeah, and it's really about a perception. And you will always have, the naysayers in every group. There is always one, I think, in every group. But the overall, I don't think that the people are like, let's put up this big fence and I want to keep, everyone else out and whatever. I think what Brentford's done is a beautiful example. You had 13, but I had 13 or 14 estates, you had businesses, you had schools. They got together, they formed a community association, they fixed up the roads, they worked collaboratively with security and the police, they repaired areas on William Nicol, they got rid of graffiti, they set up formal settlements. This is a proactive estate initiative, but you need the right people to do that. And so the question then comes is, if we don't have bodies on the ground in an HOA, are we able, through managing agents, still have this collaborative thinking and this collaborative, and that's perhaps maybe a question maybe more for yourself is, does it become too commercialized? Is it too much competition? And therefore, they don't want to share information. They want to stay like, I'm fighting to get the building next to me and the building over here.
Yes, absolutely. We were talking about power just now. Let's talk about power and directors in homeowners associations, because that is definitely something that is prevalent in the work that I do, and in terms of a lot of homeowners who are saying that directors have got quite a lot of power. How does the decision-making authority of HOA directors compare to sectional title? And just talk us through that in your experience.
I think you said something really important earlier on about, HOAs look down on BCs. I don't think it's a look down. I think that a homeowners association has been like told and to follow the Companies Act. And so they follow it to the letter of the law. And, the Sectional Title Management Act is for sectional titles. The confusion has kind of come in with CSOS, no offense to CSOS, because it doesn't separate HOAs, but it just calls everyone a community scheme. And initially, the rules and regulations that CSOS were bringing out specifically named Sectional Title Management Act. It never didn't say HOA Company Act. And I think in this chain, it created a little bit of a divide. We are ruled by a Company Act. We have a contract in place. We have to stick to those contracts because that's what our members have signed. And on the other side, the HOAs are looking at, the sectional titles are looking at Sectional Title Act. So when it comes to power, the power of the HOA at its board really is based on that contract that is signed. They have the power that sits within the contract. They can't move outside of their contract. And I suppose for trustees of a Sectional Title Act, there's a legal act that they have to follow.
Prescriptive, yeah. It's prescriptive, absolutely.
So many years ago, I threw out, and I still remember it was at a meeting, and I suggested it, and it was met with a lot of boos before CSOS was formed. I said, isn't it time that the HOA started looking at having an HOA Act, something prescriptive? No, absolutely not. We have enough involvement, we have enough legislation, we have enough, there's enough things loops to jump through. But I do believe that had they formed an act at that time, perhaps a lot of this confusion would not be there. We would all
Very much so.
understand.
Very much so. So, Louise, you know what? I think it was probably about, I don't know if you ever remember a chap by the name of Bob Gold in the sectional title industry. He was like the guru at that time, probably 1997, 98. And he was always of the view that there should be a separate act, definitely. And I think it's something that we need to push for as an industry, because it's this Companies Act is really not a great vehicle for running
No.
scheme. I found I really don't like the whole, people don't know, does the MOI contain the rules, or do you have to have the MOI and your schedules with, all sorts of, there's a lot of confusion around it. So, yeah. And the transparency of directors, do you feel good enough?
I think again, that 2019 brought around a lot of eyeballs on the estate. I think transparency is an issue within every single residential community, sectional title, body corporate, and especially as we get the price range of a development is starting to range from 900,000 Rand upwards. Everyone has a cousin, everyone has a friend of somebody they know, and so that is an issue, I think. And I think that's where conflict comes, because it's the same conflict. And I don't mean to be rude, but 15 years ago, I feel like we had this similar conflicts that we have now. There's always somebody that wants to go with the service provider that might be a cousin. There's always somebody breaking a rule. There's always an architectural detail that is a rule that's being broken, and there's always a complaint. So technology helps when it comes to governance. But number one is communication. Communication helps when it comes to governance. If we know as an industry body, whether you're a body corporate or an HOA, your homeowners are not reading your rules. You need to find a way, whether it's post a rule a week, name 10 rules and win a prize, get a free dinner at the, at the clubhouse, or whatever it might be, have a puzzle quiz night just on the rules, whatever it might be that you do. It is the responsibility of the homeowner to read the rules. We do have a situation where property practitioners are trying to get property sold and could be misleading potential investors when it comes to rules. But at the end of the day, if you're buying into something and there's a contract, it is your responsibility to read that contract and agree with the rules and ask questions. And I think that's really what, offer those AGM notes, get an understanding of where your development sits financially, have that information at your fingertips. And this is where, again, would a managing agent who's running 6 or 7 estates, traditional estates, be able to have that kind of information accessible? It would have a front of house person trained to be able to deal with those types of homeowners. So technology, yes, but I do, you can't deny the fact that some homeowners associations have issues with who's getting which contracts. And
absolutely. But tell us more about also you would lead us into resident engagement, right? Have you seen more apathy, or have you seen something,
I think it's, I'm a bit, I'm a criminal in this space. So I live in a community that has a community association. I moved in 2019. 2017. There was no internet. I died. Everybody in the neighborhood was about 100 years old. I hope no one in my neighborhood is listening to this. And I wanted internet. I wanted fiber installed. So what did I do? I became the chairperson of my association. I got fiber installed. And then when I tried to get out of that role, it was crickets for the next 3 or 4 years. But And I think, so I do think people come, have an agenda, absolutely. Sorry, I've lost my train of thought there. I was reading, someone was saying thank you and goodbye then, I caught my eye.
Okay, maybe
think,
we can just answer something quickly here by
yes.
Kath. Loving this webinar, being based in the UAE, would like to know more about your work here. Let's just go quickly. We've only got a few minutes left,
Sure.
Louise, about overseas. Have you seen anything interesting happening overseas?
Yes, absolutely. So buying residential community, as we know it in South Africa, is all about security. Residential community living overseas is completely different. It's about lifestyle. It's about community. It's about, property investment and all of those types of things. From a UAE perspective, we've seen a lot of South Africans looking at the UAE for property investment. Obviously, Mauritius is another hotspot. They are running their development slightly different. They obviously do have a managing agent or managing rules and regulations, and you buy in as an investor. A lot of the ones that we've worked on have been off plan, so you have payment plans around it, and then you use that property as and when you want to, depending on why you've bought. Immigration to UAE is happening, and obviously immigration to other parts of the world. Portugal's another one. Their immigration policies have changed a little bit, so there's a different type of structure in place. Same with the USA. So I think that, when I look and think of community living, I mean, the community living was not born in South Africa. Retirement communities that offer a life right solution, that's an Australian, New Zealand product that was born in those two countries. And we brought that over and we amended it to sort of suit our environment. And when you mention China, I mean, China's technology is so advanced. They manage their entire community off a dashboard. So absolutely, I think that community living in America, I mean, there's 3,000 homeowners associations in the USA. That's also obviously mainly in probably Florida, but there's also a lot of these communities. And again, they are created security, community living, people wanting to come together, have a sense of self, whether that sense of self is in a physical manifestation of it in a community, or within it's in a digital manifestation of your community. Equally important with a shifting generation. As you want to communicate. Okay, I can see we're coming to an end.
No, you know what I want to end with, and I think it's really important because a lot of women listening who are managing agents, portfolio managers, and I think it can spark quite a lot of excitement, what we've spoken about. So what kind of tips would you give these women who are keen to look at getting, into this HOA space more?
Grit and determination are you
For sure.
grit? That's the key. If I think about it, grit, it's absolute grit and determination. There are opportunities all the time within innovation to find a way. If you want to work for an HOA, you apply, you can come in at any role. There's lots of opportunities within the space. If you are a managing agent that is a business that's looking at bringing in estates, I would be quite smart at this point. There's a lot of movement. I would almost build, if I was a managing agent, I would build an estate section to my business. I would bring on, whether it's freelance or full-time, estate managers and their skills so that they can manage that. And they sometimes have team members that you could bring in at the same time. And I would start looking at how I could facilitate both a managing agent type role from a financial perspective, but then the actual day-to-day. Working in an HOA, I think, is probably Sue could probably answer this more than me. Somewhat of a thankless job. However, if you have the right temperament, you enjoy working with people, you're prepared to put in the graft, I think that there is a definite need for skills training. So anyone that's offering skills training, I'm finding it in the lower organizations. lower income brackets where people are put in charge of HOAs and need skills training.
Excellent. Sue says, absolutely agree with Louise. It's been a hard slog to get to being the CEO of a large estate due to this industry being deemed to be a man's world. Hardest has been earning the respect of residents who often don't think a woman can do it. Thank you, Sue. And we definitely know that a woman definitely can do it, and probably sometimes even better than men. Louise, thank you so much for your valuable insights today. Really appreciate it. And don't forget to look at your email about the launch of our Whisk shop. So every purchase supports the ongoing work that we're doing at Whisk to ensure that women's voices are heard in our industry. So please do go on and try to support us and send out word to your fellow co-workers in our industry. Thank you again. Thank you so much. And we'll see you again in August.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.